Hey there, how you doing? Mr. Bill here today, and today I would like to do a tutorial on, it's sort of like a response to the comments that I got from yesterday's tutorial, and some of the comments that I got were actually really helpful, and therefore I thought it warranted another tutorial explaining what some of these people said, because obviously all of you wouldn't have read all the comments on all the networks that I posted the videos on, so instead I'll just make another video. So these are all tricks that came from people who commented on my videos, and I love that because I've been learning tons of shit from comments on videos for years, and I like, you know, the idea of just sharing all this information and people being like, hey, actually there's a better way to do this thing that you thought you knew the best way to do. So here's some options for this. So yesterday we talked about timing your compression. So, you know, if we had like a 16th note, we wanted basically the sidechain compressor, the goal of it, I had to explain this to my webmaster after I made the video. The goal of a sidechain compressor, for those who don't know, is primarily, as far as I know, primarily it was designed originally for sports casting and some shit to do with telecommunication. I don't know. It was designed for some other shit, but then dance music producers basically started using it to make their drums punch through a bunch of sounds. So if you have this large, like heavy bass sound, every time your kick hits or your snare hits, you want all of those sounds to get crushed down. Maybe not to like negative infinity dB, but you want the sound to come down considerably, and therefore the kick comes out whilst the bass is down, for instance, and then the bass comes back up when the kick is gone, and then the snare comes in, ducks the bass again, and then when the snare is gone, the bass comes back again. So an example of that would be this track here, Fingernail Compost, of which you can get this project file, as well as pretty much every project file you see in my tutorials at my website, which I'll link in the description. So we have a really good use of sidechain compression here, and that's why I've decided to use this project file. It sounds like this. So here's the problem slash solution slash conversation argument, whatever you want to call it, that we're having here. Basically what we want to input into the compressor. So the compressor needs to hear something to know when to turn down. So the thing that we want to put into it is basically the shortest signal possible. We want to put a click into it, and the click's going to sound, the click's going to sound something like this. This is quite short. It's not as short as the one we were using in, say, the Schlappy project file yesterday, but, you know, it's quite short, something like this. And the reason why you want that, and you don't want a long-ass kick like this, see, is because this kick here, if we record this down into a new channel like so, you can see how long that kick is in comparison to this one. So the release time of the compressor won't even start until here. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to have however much kick, like 184 milliseconds of kick before your release time even starts to engage. So when I have my release here on 45 milliseconds, it's engaging 45 milliseconds after this. So I couldn't even get it to do the same thing by sending this kick into it. Basically, I could have the release time all the way at 1 and it still wouldn't engage for 184 to 186 milliseconds or something like that. So that's why we want to send a click into the sidechain compressor and not a kick drum or a snare drum, because they're too damn long. So basically the way I've always attacked this is I've just created a click channel, or I've created a click sample or whatever, and I've put it into a channel called SC input. So SC input, I usually leave a black up the top here, and then I just, like, you know, mute it and put, you know, all of these little click samples through the track. And it is kind of a pain. I don't mind doing it that much. For a track like this where it's all 4/4, it's especially easy, so I don't care. But for tracks where the beat is changing a lot, like for instance earlier here, you can see this beat's a little bit more complex, like, and whilst you're in the writing process, let's say you decide to move the kick over to here like this, then you also have to make sure that you move the click over with it so everything is sidechaining properly with everything else, if that makes sense. So basically what I want to do here is show some solutions that people gave me for this problem of having to move stuff around and all this stuff. So we'll just use the 4/4 section because it's an easy way to get a feel of what's happening sound-wise for the sidechain compressor and stuff. But basically what we wanted, the problem that we're trying to solve here is that we need to send a click input into the sidechain compressor, and we need that click input to change with our drum sequence changes, if that makes sense. It's like a weird meta problem, and if you don't know what the problem is, then you haven't been producing long enough, basically. But you will come across this problem for sure if you're producing dance music at some point. So the first solution I got was convert the drums to MIDI, and then just put a click sample in a sampler. And that's kind of a good idea, but it means that every time you change anything in your drums, you have to render it again, and then you have to convert the drums to MIDI again, and then you have to put a click sample. Like, it's way more work than just moving the click sample in the first place in audio, in my opinion. The second idea I got was actually quite good. What you do is you create a send, and let's call this send sidechain, and we'll put it on pre-fader. And we're going to send this kick and this clap to that send, so send B. So what we have now is this. It's quite distorted and whatnot, but who gives a shit? So what we want to do now is put a gate on this channel, and I tried messing with this for a while, but basically what you want to do is you want to make the gate just open for the transient of the sound, so it becomes essentially a click like this. And then you have to mess around with the hold and the release times a little bit. So you can see that's creating like a pretty short click sound. So if we rendered that now into a new channel and compared it to our actual click, let's render this. Well, it's actually a little bit late for starters, and I couldn't really get around that, and I'm not sure why that is, because there's no like delays here or whatever in the send. So maybe it's just like a natural delay that's happening between the, or actually maybe I have this, no, that's zero latency. Yeah, I actually don't know why that's happening. It's just some latency, I suppose. So that's not really an option, because you want everything to be super tight when you're producing. I suppose you could do it that way, and then you could render the whole thing, and then you could just move the whole thing back. It's a good idea, but it doesn't really work. But then this one guy, he had this idea that is just so fucking good. What you do is you get Saturn, FabFilter Saturn, you put it on the return channel the same way as we just did with the gate, but then you use an envelope follower. That's an envelope generator. That's an envelope follower. You want to use an envelope generator. And with this envelope generator, you can generate an envelope, and it's going to create that envelope every time it hears a signal. So it's like, okay, I hear the signal, generate the envelope. So we don't want any drive, turn the drive all the way down. And basically we want to attach this envelope generator to the output level of Saturn. And then we want to turn Saturn all the way down. And then we want to use this threshold here to kind of make it so that when the drums hit into the sidechain compressor, actually we probably don't need to send the clap, by the way, because the kick is, I think, just normal. But anyway, I guess we could send the clap. So basically just mess around with this threshold until it's just triggering it. If we have the threshold too high, it's, I don't think, going to work. And if we have it too low, it's not going to work. So we have to turn it up a little bit. And then if you turn the decay back down, you can hear how tight of a click that's making. That's amazing. So now if we render this one down into the sidechain channel that we had up here, and look at that, it might be out of time again. Yeah, it's slightly out of time. I guess that's just the way that send channels work. Maybe you could use this track delay here to fix it. And actually a good way that we could find the amount to delay it is the trick that we were using yesterday. If you just hold Alt and drag to the front of this click sample, and then put your cursor over the highlighted section, we can see down here in this gray bar where we were talking about yesterday, it's 32 milliseconds. So if we just go -32 and then do this again, it's still not in time. I don't really get these track delays, man. They're fucking dumb. Anyway, that's how to produce the click. The only problem is that I don't like putting sidechain inputs onto a send channel. And he didn't necessarily say a send channel. This guy on YouTube, his name is Samuel, he just commented. Instead of putting it on a send channel, he said to put it on a bus. So I don't know what he meant by that, but I assume what he meant is probably to create like a drum bus like this, put it under your kick and your clap or whatever, send your kick and your clap into it like this. And then he said put FabFilter Saturn on ghost mode, but I looked in the manual for something called ghost mode, and there is nothing called ghost mode on FabFilter Saturn. So we could definitely create this click here, but then I'm not really sure what I would have to do to auto mute. So I don't think that's it. But basically the idea is that you're creating a click with FabFilter Saturn. If there is such thing as a ghost mode, I imagine what it meant to him is that you could put this on a channel like this, have it sort of bypassed, but still have it accessible or something like that. I'm not really sure. Perhaps what we could do is create a rack, and we could have this as the SC comp input, and then we could have this as just dry signal. And then we could actually just mute this SC comp send and then delete this FabFilter Saturn off the dry signal. And now let's check this out. We could actually probably access that if we go to drum bus here, and then in the second input here, take the input, the second, what is this, like the where you're taking the audio from into the compressor, basically take this from post mixer or post effects, at least from the SC comp chain, I guess you would call it. So now what we get is it's actually pretty quiet. So what I've found is I've had to put utilities after it, like so. And if you turn that right up to 36 or 35 or whatever, that should, yeah, you can see it's hitting the compressor quite hard now. So that's generating a click input. And now if I go in here and just, you know, do whatever I want with my drums like this, now check it out. If we look at the compressor, so that's another thing that I figured out is the fucking Saturn, it doesn't trigger unless the other sound has like completely finished first. So that was one problem that I found with it, but you can usually kind of get around it if you just make sure that the tails aren't too long and whatnot. I don't really understand why that happens, but it's just something that happens. But anyway, for something that's, you know, quite simple where the sounds aren't going that fast, this seems like a good solution, and I'm definitely going to try it in the future. Yeah, you can see it's missing that second kick, but if like that it's missing that one right there. So let's say I flattened this just for lols, and then I made this way shorter like that, and then put a fade on it like this. I think now it will catch it. So now if we look in here, yeah, still not catching it, but maybe maybe it's because of the threshold actually. So if we go into the drum bus here and just make sure that the threshold is going to catch stuff that is that low in volume, and then look, yeah, you can see now it's getting it. Isn't that amazing? That's fucking awesome. So now we just have this sidechain click input, and we can just do whatever we want with our drums, and that will just work. And if we didn't have this on, it would be like this. We have also stuff going on extra. We have like multiple sidechains in this gain structure. But you can hear that with no sidechaining, it's just eating the kick. So let's turn on this sidechaining, and then let's get our time correct. So basically the kick goes for this long. We want the bass to sort of come up around this point in time. So let's get about 113 milliseconds of release. The only thing is when you solo the channel, it has the same effect as when you solo the channel and the send, and you have the sidechain inputs going to a send. It's like you can't solo it and hear the effect. Whereas when you use the SC input channel like this, you totally can just go take the input from SC input and you can still see the effect of it. So I prefer my way just for that reason, just so I can solo it and hear it that way. But for the sake of writing and simplicity and like, you know, moving stuff around all the time in the creative process and still having your mix be like correctly sidechained the whole time without having to think about it, that's really, really cool. So I actually thought of another way that you can do this without FabFilter Saturn. You can use this envelope follower. It's not perfect. It's not quite as good as using FabFilter Saturn. I don't know why. It's just not as responsive. But basically what you would want to do is you would actually want to put this on your drum bus again, same as FabFilter Saturn. And every time it hears a signal, it generates an envelope. So if we just play this, You can see every time it hears the kick and the snare, it's generating envelopes. So what we would want to do, maybe turn the gain up a bit. And then you can kind of shape this envelope with this rise and fall time and stuff like so. Although we don't want it to be a triangle, we want the rise to be instant, but the fall time, we want it to be pretty quick as well, because we want it to be essentially a click again. And then what we want to do is map this to the utility of the gain, the gain of the utility. And then we want to, if you don't turn this second amount down to 50, it's going to go up to plus 36 or 35 dB instead of just 0. So you can see it's kind of doing the same thing, but it doesn't really work. So yeah, that was my other idea, but it doesn't really work. So FabFilter Saturn wins that idea. Whoever, Samuel was his name. Samuel, you win. Your approach is awesome, except for the thing that where I can't like solo. There's only two problems with it. I can't solo stuff and still be working with the sidechain compressor in action. And the second problem, what was the second problem? Oh yeah, that some of the like tails of the drums are a little too long, and therefore like the Saturn doesn't trigger properly or something. But maybe that was my wrongdoing. Perhaps I needed to, let's go envelope envelope generator. Perhaps it was my problem, or maybe I needed to make this release time shorter. So let's actually try that again. Yeah, so you can't hear that, you can't get 2 clicks there, right? And that's not a problem in this case, because it looks like, by the looks of my chain, I didn't put 2 clicks there in my version either. I didn't go like that. So in this case, it's not a problem. But in some cases where you're doing like really tight, fast rhythm changes and stuff like that, it doesn't seem like FabFilter Saturn like stays up to date fast enough with that stuff. But I might be fucking it up in some way, perhaps. I don't know. I just made the release time 0 second, like the short as it can be. So, and it's still doing it. So I don't really understand what that problem is or how to fix it or whatever. But anyway, there's some solutions to the sidechain click problem. If you enjoyed this tutorial, go visit my website. There's plenty more tutorials like this one there, and you can also buy this particular project file there as well as many others, or you can subscribe on my website and get everything for free. Well, not for free, you pay $15 a month, but you get everything, basically all my sample packs, all my music, all of my project files, basically just everything. So thanks for watching. Have a good day.